Okay, is everybody?
We're live.
Do you have copies of this?
I'll go get copies.
Well, I've got copies.
I just sent it to the senator at Annie's,
Oh, to Senator Norris.
just to you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay.
So for you to make copies.
Yeah, why don't we make copies?
Okay. Yeah. And if you want, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to just give a basic overview.
Why don't you give us an overview, John, and then we'll kind of get into the weeds a little bit.
Okay.
Annie and Tim.
My name is John Campbell, Executive Director for the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members for having us. What we're going to be doing today is Annie Noonan is here that will be able to, and Barbara Bernardini do the financing, and so they'll be able to answer any questions or go into the specifics of dollars and cents. Tim is going to would be dealing with some of the actual pressures inside the individual offices. And what I would like to just say, and something that I've told this committee before, is the fact that we have the criminal justice system. We have the courts, the judiciary, and the defender general, and ourselves. I always look at them as a three-legged stool that we're all critical to making having the criminal justice system work and be successful, and of course other organizations that provide different restorative services. But right now, and I've said this in the past, this is not a criticism of the legislature, because what I'm about to say is when I was in the legislature. But we, for the last 10 years, the criminal justice system was not the major priority as far as funding for the state's attorneys or the defender general or the courts outside of the IT that came through with COVID. There were priorities that were immediate, that were critical issues such as healthcare that the legislature focused more on. So now we're facing, I believe, we're coming up to really kind of realizing what the fact of not having that, dealing with it on a regular basis, an annual basis. We're finding ourselves that the caseloads backlog has increased. The caseloads within the individual offices have continued to grow. As you know, you've heard this number before. We have over 26,000 cases right now, which is just incredible. It's incredible pressure on the deputy state's attorneys, the victims advocates, the admins, and the state's attorneys themselves. And we've had a difficult time with trying to explain to our deputies and our office personnel the fact that we are increasing your caseloads, but we're not increasing the number of other resources that we can provide to you or help you out with. We can't give you more deputy. I'm sorry.
I just have a clarifying question. When you say over 26,000 cases, is that dockets or people?
That is docket or docket.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. It's in a individual case. So yeah, thank you. Anyway, the resources that they need. I mean, we have people who are in essence making pretty much like $25, $30 an hour as attorneys, which and they're faced with having to. It's not an 8-hour job. I mean, it's not an 8-hour day. Often these people are working on weekends, also at night, to try to keep up with the caseload that they do have. So we're looking at a serious morale problem within the ranks. And I'm not just saying from our department, but all across the board with the criminal justice system. So we have, in fact, the document you're receiving now is one that Representative Squirrel had asked that we prepare. Originally, we had put the numbers, and I think we've talked to you before about when they were asked which numbers or how many deputies, how many victims advocates. We had said 10, 10, and 10 deputy state's attorneys, 10 victims advocates, and 10 admins. And then Representative Squirrel had presented his numbers to the House Appropriations Committee. We met, and with Representative Squirrel, he asked, well, if we did this, if you broke it down to ones that you could actually hire now, like as of July 1st, whenever the money is appropriated, versus can you hire some of them later in the year? almost having the, and I said, as long as the appropriations are for this year, that's fine, because we can't, as you know, you can't appropriate for a future, or you can't bind a future legislature. But the method in which he was suggesting is one I believe that can work, I believe, so.
I hate to rain on the parade, but I'm not sure that the Senate would see it the same way as Representative Squirrel, because I believe that even though you're not, we're running into this problem right now in diversion where 900,000 of justice reinvestment money went to the diversion programs under justice reinvestment. And the corrections department said that was one-time money, no guarantee. Diversion saying, well, that was, we just got cut 900,000 by corrections. I spoke with Representative Squirrel. He went over this plan, and I'm not sure that the Senate Appropriations would agree to contingent appropriations with the idea that we're gonna do this in 26. Half year, even though it'd be a half year, I think it's binding. There's no guarantee that 26 is gonna be better than 25. So I think what we should do is fund what we can and go from there.
Yeah, and the way it was explained to me that, because I kept on asking the specifics about, well, you have to, in essence, you're appropriating the money now. The money has to be appropriated. If you want us to hold this.
So you're appropriating, say, well, it's what you've got here. You're appropriating some of the money for July 1, some of the money for November 1, and some of the money later. And then with a full rollout in FY 26, that's where the problem comes in. You've now created a expectation for funding for 26 that may not be achievable.
Yeah, and I was looking at it like saying, well, if you want to, like, in essence, say we want vacancy savings for 6 months,
But from my perspective, criminal justice and civil justice is a core government function. Therefore, it needs to be funded at a level that it can operate. So the governor, in my opinion, has severely limited your ability to operate and would only contribute to continued backlog, which is not productive for the system. So I'm sympathetic to your request, but I want to make clear that I look at it as whatever we, whether we do it in, this amount of 6 months, whatever we do needs to be looked at as a full year. And I can't see, so this is where the problem comes in. Representative Squirrel showed me about 15 million in expenses, right? For FY 26, but about 8 million or 7-something million at FY 27. That's for the Judiciary, State Attorneys, Defender General, Bob's group, Access to Justice, other groups. So you total 15 million, you're gonna do about 8. You now have, in the FY 26 budget, you now have a $15 million expenditure with a hole of about 8 million. That becomes a problem. I think that's where, and I've talked to Senator Kitchell about it, and I think she would agree that that is not what we want to do. So let's just look at,
we'll look at it as a total.
Look at it as a total, and we'll see what we can do.
So total, we do need the 10 deputies, 10 victims advocates, and 10 admins, or what we, and that's the bare bones to get it down to where, what was it, 250 cases, an average caseload of 250.
Actually, if I may, Tim Leaderson from the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, just briefly, without getting into county by county. Right now, the average is 362 cases per deputy state's attorney. The ideal number would be something closer to 250. To get to 250, you would need 25 new deputies. That is not cognizable this year. So 10 was the number that has been floated around. That would get us to about 317 cases per attorney. So you're driving it down a bit. But just wanted to flag that, it still wouldn't get you to 250, but it would certainly drop it below 350.
And all the national,
And what is when we're talking about deputies, the number of deputies that the governor put in his budget for you to have vacant? 9?
Annie, I would have to defer to you on that. Annie?
Hi. Yep. Good morning. For the record, Annie Noonan, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. For us to be able to meet the governor's recommend, we would have to have $945,000 in vacancy savings. Our operating part of the operating part of our budget is extremely limited. It's about 12%. It's primarily utilized for transcripts, mental health evaluations, that kind of stuff. So we get as you know, we get a bottom line from in the governor's recommend. When Barb and I sat with the $945,000 that we would hold in vacancy savings to meet the governor's recommend. That equates to for us to hold positions open, about 9 positions open, pretty much the whole year.
Okay, so is it 10 new deputies plus the 9, or is it?
Well, we have to bring back to, our level of funding, that 945 is critical to us. I'm sorry, Annie, go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. Absolutely. Restoration of the 945 is critical.
You need funding for the 9 positions, and then you're looking at 10 new deputies.
Yes.
Correct. That would be the continuing bringing in that vacancy savings of 945. We would want to be held.
And how much does the 10 new deputies cost?
I think we did 150.
Then we have questions.
Let me. I think we used a number of 150. About $1.5 million. I think we used about $150,000 as a baseline number. That would be salary and benefits.
Okay, we have questions either for Annie or for anybody from Senator Sheeman and Senator Bowski.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding. These 9 positions, are they the 9 positions that are being proposed to be held vacant? Are they currently vacant or are they filled?
Yeah, these are ones that are currently filled. Is there one open, Annie?
There is one open. Well, right now, so of course it's a moving target. There's one open right now. Alex Burke was promoted out of the Bennington office, was promoted as a judge. We're recruiting for that. There's another position that is assigned to Rutland that we have had to use some of the funding for that to pay for our domestic violence prosecutor in the Rutland office. So we've been kind of floating that slowly. If we get this more money assigned to us in a stop grant, the Department of Justice stop grant, we might be able to put that back on the market to fill. Right now, I would say we're using the position half time to do domestic violence prosecution. And one other position that is we're hoping to convert to a legal assistant to be shared by Windsor County and Windham County. They have requested that. So that's moving a position from one title to another requires a lot of paperwork and back and forth with the Department of Human Resources. So I would say right now that's our total universe of real vacancies.
So,
but we would lose. I mean, in other words, if we had to go by this 945, if that was not we were not made whole for that, we would lose 8 actual people. One is obviously, as Annie said, is not filled yet. And the thing with ours is very flexible. When the administration asked us originally for our numbers at that season, we had more vacancies because we were filling the positions that were given to us last year. So
the request, as it's written, would require you to lay off at least 8 deputy state's attorneys.
I would say that's correct. Annie, is that correct?
We would do our best never to lay anybody off, but just to hold vacancies. We haven't had that much attrition. I mean, we're just finishing up the 3rd quarter for this year, and I think our vacancy savings number by doing some of this, because we had a $231,000 vacancy saving demand for this year that we had to meet. Right now, we're at about $400,000 of vacancy savings. Yes, it would probably
we have our
combination
deputies
of
people. Yeah,
it would be a combination of not filling positions as anyone leaves, or and then potentially laying people off.
Yeah.
And what type of impact would that have on your workload?
It would be, it's devastating. It would be absolutely devastating.
Yeah, I think the caseload would venture over potentially 450 to 500, depending on the situation, which is already the circumstance in some offices, but it would make the average go up.
And the thing, again, this committee knows is the fact that, and I've testified this before, we're not there just to prosecute people. We're trying to help the system. We're trying to help people prevent people from coming into the system. And the only way we can really do that is if we have, our deputies have some time, ability to talk with the defense attorney, or talk, if it's a pro se, or work with the defense attorney, or they're someone from the restorative justice to work up and work out some programming that might help these individuals. As you know, so losing, people would say, oh, so you have 8 people, you have to, that may not maybe laid off or whatever, which again, is Annie's correct, we try not to do that. That's a lot for us. I mean, the number of attorneys we have currently, and from where they'll come from, as you probably, if you've read the paper, you know that the homicide, even though nationally it's supposedly crime rate's going down, our homicides have just escalated over the last month. I think how many did we bring in new ones?
So it appears that there's 2 or 3. There was 8 pending in Orleans. Now there's an additional 2 or 3. Orleans or Chittenden has over 20. It appears. Bennington looks like 17. Caledonia has about, I think it's 10 at this point. So there's multiple counties with 10 or more pending murder or attempted murder cases.
And last clarification, you mentioned some numbers earlier. My notes were, note taking was too slow. You said 4,500. What number were you referring to?
In regard to what?
Maybe I misheard you, but I had asked what the effect would be, and you had mentioned some numbers.
Oh,
and I think.
So I would want to do the math and come back to you, but given right now that the average is 362 per attorney out in the field, if you lost 8 or 9 positions, the average would jump up over 400. Certainly, I would want to do the exact.
Yes,
Thank you.
2 questions. One, in relation to the numbers you just said, those pending homicides are not just in this year or this month. Those are
Over time.
Okay,
Yeah, they're pending in the court system. They could have been filed at any time.
right. Because I mean, I know I was called to jury duty on a homicide case from 2017. So I just want to be clear that there weren't 20 homicides in the county last month.
I'm sorry. If I came across, that's not what I meant. I was saying recently there's been, several that have occurred, that high profile.
Yes.
Good clarifying question.
Yes. My other question is sort of to this underlying question, and it is am I to understand that you were directed to increase the vacancy rate in the department in order to balance the budget?
No, Annie, can you explain the vacancy savings?
Right. So how this works, and I think you probably have seen this with other departments, is we all get a bottom line in the governor's recommended budget. You have to, bring your budget in to meet this number. And for us to be able to meet the number that was in the governor's recommended budget, after Barb and I go through literally every single budget line that we have and say, can we cut 2,000 here, 3,000 there? We do that. And then we are left with really no other place to find money to meet the governor's recommend except by holding vacancies. So that's how it works. Yeah.
As a bit of a follow-up to that, what is the department's sort of current vacancy rate, and what would this increase it to? Like, I know, and this may be a DHR question, I might even be able to find it myself through digging, but I know every department has a percentage vacancy rate, and I'm wondering what this would increase your department to.
Annie does our HR.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Right. So, Senator, you might remember that we're not really under the auspices of the Department of Human Resources as a result of the Vermont Supreme Court case in re-election. So we don't get told what our vacancy rate to carry is. It kind of fluctuates from year to year. Currently, and I did an extensive memo the other night for Commissioner Gresham, and there was questions about, like, what do you actually have as vacancies? So right now, luckily, we have no victim advocacy vacancies. That's great because they're really critical to our mission. We have one vacancy in an admin who just recently left the Franklin County office, but we have a couple of candidates for that. And basically more or less the three vacancies I mentioned to you with just a little bit ago about with the deputy state's attorneys. I would say that if you're asking like what would be a turnover rate, very minimal in terms of most of our positions, higher in the deputy state's attorneys, partly because the workload. And for example, some people that we're still in very good contact with, relationship with, who have left us to go over to the Attorney General's office, basically because they said, I can't handle the workload. I have no family life. I have no, one of our attorneys went over from Chittenden to the Attorney General's office and said, I need balance. I can't handle the amount of workload, and I actually can go over to the AG and have a normal work day. So we lose folks to that, and of course, there's a little bit of attrition for people who are moving, for family reasons and stuff like that. We have more turnover in the deputies than we do in the other two positions. We really only have basically three types of positions, which are the deputies, the victim advocates, and we have a broad category. We say administrative support, but that can be everything from a legal assistant to an administrative support, top administrative assistant. So we don't have a lot of turnover in those at all. So I think, it fluctuates year to year, but I would say probably our turnover rate is probably in the deputies is probably about 6 to 10%. But I'd have to go back and look at that for you, Senator, if you wanted that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. So currently it sounds like you have 4 vacant positions, and that by having 9 vacant positions, it would increase that by more than 100%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, because we're right. Yes, because those positions are falling under our current budget or FY24 budget. We don't, so that, yes, you're absolutely correct.
What would that do to the backlogs?
It's not going to help backlog.
I didn't think so.
And I'm going to be very honest with you, Senator, and you and I have spoken about this in the past. Just by adding the number of deputies that we're looking, we're just trying to keep tread water. Right. And so it is not really going to help the backlog because that, they have all these cases still coming in. Those are the ones that they're dealing with first. They're basically triaging. And so, and I had spoke with the House and also members here in this committee about where if you wanted to really attack the backlog directly, I think that we would need to have 2 individual people, one north, one south, going through each one of the departments that are not associated with that individual office. Because if they're in that office, the SI is going to say, no, you can deal with that later on, or somebody else can deal with it. We need to have somebody go and with a sterile view of the cases. So that would be an addition. I didn't put it in here because it.
May I add just one thing to that?
Sure.
In Rutland, for example, after State's Attorney Sullivan took over the course of a number of months, because he was concentrated after hours, he reduced the average age of the old cases by over 100 days after he took office. And that is something that it took that extra time in the office after hours.
His wife was not happy, I can tell you that.
And working with the judge, with the defense counsel, was a very collaborative approach. And so that's the type of focus, right, that I think we're all interested in trying to have more widespread.
Yeah, it's concerning to me that when we are talking so much about public safety, that we're also talking about extending the time in which people have access to justice.
Right.
And so I am significantly concerned that the impact of the governor's recommend would be to increase vacancies by over 100% in your department when you're barely treading water as it is, and we have cases that have been sitting for years and these incredible backlogs. So it's really concerning to me.
And I think what happened was when they were originally looking at this, as I said, we had vacancies there because of we hadn't filled the positions that the legislature had awarded us. then they could have been looking at that and saying, well, you already have these things vacant, so why not, we don't need to fill it. But all I know is that, and we spoke with the administration in the last few days, explaining to them that, no, that's not what happened. Those positions were filled. They were not filled at the moment we had to submit our memo, but they certainly are not, those are not vacancies. Those are filled positions.
Mhm.
Can you speak a little to the victims advocate?
The victims advocates, and they're the unsung heroes in our department. These folks, most of the offices only have two. There's some that have three. We actually had mistaken this before. Rutland only has two. I think you were in the impression that they had three. But they have to handle all those other cases, and so all the cases that are in the office, the majority of them have victims, so they've got higher caseloads. In addition, dealing with victims is a lot. It's a lot more time. It's not very time consuming, because you're talking with folks that have been the victims of crime, and they are emotional, and you need to try to get them all the assistance they can get. Those folks are ones that are extremely overworked. All our folks are overworked, I think, but those folks, the victims advocates, we're very fortunate that we have them, and they need just as much help as the deputies do.
So you're asking 10 new
Victims advocates.
deputy states, deputy SAs, 10
Yes.
new victims advocates, and 10 administrative and legal assistant positions.
Yeah, and also, just if I could add on the victims advocates, one of the big problems we're facing now is the restitution, because in trying to figure out what the restitution is that they're entitled to, because that goes through CV, Crime Victim Services, and they have a restitution unit, so we're having to try to rethink how the best way to work with that. But I know that our victims advocates are spending a lot of time, far too much time.
They essentially turn into mini investigators for the restitution hearing that sometimes happen 30 days after conviction. So the conviction happens, and then sometimes there's this restitution hearing dangling in the wind, and the victim advocate has to track that, sometimes collect receipts, get witnesses to come in even after a conviction, and it's a very heavy burden that happens, and the deputies still have to litigate those after a conviction often, if they're not stipulated to.
So two other questions. We just heard from the judiciary that they're proposing an increase in the number of deputy sheriffs who would be doing court security. And they're looking at a 3.7% increase from $51 an hour to $52.89 per hour. Is that doable?
I again defer.
To get that many sheriffs?
Well, that's the thing.
New deputies.
New deputies. I mean, clearly it's needed.
Since Annie's gonna answer that question, I guess
Yeah.
we'll let Annie do it.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
She told me to throw it.
So we were all very much involved with the judiciary's proposal on the court security, and the sheriffs were all involved in our department, just to kind of oversee and help make sure that we understood where it was going. So the sheriffs feel confident. The sheriffs fully supported the judiciary's proposal, as did our department. The sheriffs, so the judiciary will create some new class under the proposal, create some new classifications.
The judiciary, all of this is above the governor's recommend, so.
I think so.
Yeah, no, it all is, I can tell you.
The sheriffs did say that they felt confident that they would be able to secure enough people to fulfill the contract with the.
I know they've reported problems in some jurisdictions getting enough sheriffs to cover the court security.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know we took testimony last year in government operations from the sheriffs that they thought those should be classified positions, and that they would not be able to secure enough contract positions. So I guess I'm a little curious what changed between now and then and now.
Well, I'm sure she finished my question. But
Fair.
Yeah, I think, so Senator, I think one of the things that maybe one of the changes is that they have some new sheriffs, as you know, and I think that they have been, some of the newer sheriffs are stepping up to the plate a lot more. to help out. And I think that they feel pretty confident now that those departments are being very supportive and backing up other county courts. So it was, vetted through this conversation about the judiciary's proposal, and they felt pretty confident. And the rate that Senator Sears was mentioning, so on a per diem basis, if we have to pay under the state transport program, if a sheriff needs to use a per diem because the state transport deputy is on an annual leave day or out on sick leave or something, we pay $50 an hour for the per diem. The sheriffs can also charge us the mileage to the court back and forth. For the most part, we are able to manage that. I did understand there was some question this morning, or that Judge Zone raised an issue about TPRs and getting people there. So if I could just mention that there's been a lot, there's a conversation going on between myself and Court Administrator Terry Corsons and Judge Zone about stuff that used to be done by the Department of Corrections. And now they're saying, well, we can't manage that transport. We can't get people from the court, from the facility to the court for these types of hearings. So we are working towards that. It's just an interesting thing because,
Can I just interrupt you for a second? This is like the fourth time I've heard this about something the Department of Corrections always did, but don't want to do anymore. I think that as we look at the Department of Corrections, I wasn't going to look specifically at the corrections budget, but I think if we can examine what we've heard from all the agencies, and if they don't want to do the work crew anymore. They don't want to do home detention anymore. They don't want to do electronic monitoring anymore. They don't want to do transports anymore. What is it? They seem to be pushing this on to other agencies.
right.
And there's something going on here that we need to be aware of and look at as a committee. This is really Judiciary Committee stuff. This is like the fourth thing I've heard. So go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
and I suspect it has a lot to do with their staffing issues at corrections. But so what we've said is that
whatever it is, that they're putting a new burden on either the judiciary or state attorney or the sheriffs.
Yes. Yeah. So what we've said with Judge Zone is, yes, we will schedule those TPRs onto the transport schedule. Our concern is, and I think that's, that those hearings are important. But what we said is, once we've committed to that, then your court officers, your court operations managers need to understand they can't load us with other transports because we're already tied up. So we will see how it goes for this year because these things have now been pushed back to us, and we are trying to see what the impact will be. I know Lori Canty from the court system is supposed to get us an estimate of how many TPRs there are per year, so we can talk with the sheriffs about scheduling those.
And you have additionally in this memo, $277,000 to eliminate the shortfall. You need to hold 3 transport deputy positions vacant.
That's what we budgeted for vacancy savings for the sheriffs.
Okay, are there currently 3 vacancies?
Yes, there are.
Okay. How many are there actually?
How many vacancies, Senator?
Yeah, how many vacancies in the sheriff's?
I believe right now we have 3 vacancies. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Don't you think that's right?
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions on the state's attorneys, or did I miss something?
No, I think, Senator, you kind of really hit the nail on the head when you talked earlier about core government functions. And clearly, the judiciary system, the criminal justice system with the Defender General, state's attorneys, and judiciary, those are core functions. And I know it's really tough. I know there's a lot of people asking for funding for different projects, and I just would hope that the legislature sees fit to make sure to shore up really the core groups of that, but that make the criminal justice system work. And because I think we all know that the next few years are going to be very, very difficult, dark years for appropriations. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just as a message, the governor has been fond of using some statistics from the Justice Center regarding 2012 to 2022. The violent crime increase of 56%. What the governor has not mentioned is that the violent crime rate in Vermont is 2% below the national average.
And that the 2023
Based on
data shows it
100,000.
going down.
And,
Sure doesn't seem like it, I have to tell you that.
well, the aggravated assault rate increased 65%. Robbery declined 27% in Vermont in the same period, 12 to 22. Rape increased 76% per 100,000. And unsolved violent crime increased by 18%. So the unsolved crimes is a huge increase, which indicates people aren't being held accountable. If you don't solve the crime, you don't have to.
Well, getting to Senator's.
But anyway, those statistics, as you do a deeper dive, I'm gonna use that today on the floor for S58, but I just want to point out that, yes, I've seen a 56% increase in violent crime, but we're still 2% below the national.
And because we're not moving enough cases through the system, we still have violent crime that's pending in courts from years
So
prior.
it makes it look like there's a lot more.
Well, just we're still getting
But
caught.
it's still up, and homicides declined in 2021, but increased in 2022 by 166%. But it doesn't take many to increase by that rate when you have 600,000 total people, and you're looking at rates based on 100,000.
That's exactly right. I mean, those numbers can.
As I said, if there's 5 people unfortunately killed in an auto crash, your death rate on the highways goes skyrockets in Vermont because of the numbers. But I think it's important to dig down into all the numbers, and I asked the Justice Center for a document that I've now written all over, which is no longer any good to copy. So, anyway.
Well, now that the pro tem has arrived,
Now that the pro tem has arrived, we will
we'll leave.
we will go to the Defender General,
Thank you again.
who also has budget issues, because he has to defend all the people that you bring to him.
We're not supposed to bring
You can stop bringing them.
No, that Matt was my job. We need to do that.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Welcome, Matt.
Good to be here.
Good to have you.
Give me a minute so that I can get this,
Absolutely.
up, if you don't mind.
Actually, we're right on time, and we're usually not, so I don't think we're.
I was
expecting
actually
to be on
shocked.
time.
Oh, did you do share?
Yeah,
Yeah, give me 1 second. Just, join the Zoom.
yeah, let me just, 23 years ago, I could see. 23 years ago, I could see.
Me too. I didn't need these readers back then, and I didn't need special help at dusk. I don't do too much driving at dawn, so I don't worry too much about dawn.
Matt, just so you know, I have to leave at 11:30 to present a bill, but I should be back in about 10 minutes, so. I'm not walking out the.
I'm really not interested in the Defender General's budget. Skip out for a while.
Yeah, I wasn't, I take little offense at anything at this point. I'm trying to join.
While we're waiting, just so you know, what we're gonna do, we're gonna go third readings first. Okay. Do you have a Zoom account?
Oh, yeah, sure, I've done this a million, I've done this 5 other times already.
It might be easier.
I don't want to
Oh, there we go.
I don't want to hang over.
You cancel. No, I got it. Give me a second.
All right, thank you.
Alright. Just being all.
I can only wear a suit 2 days in a row, can't do it 3 days in a row.
So third reading,
suit?
they say that servers are slow.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got another message.
Can we do it? We've got copies of you. Can we do it?
Yeah,
If you want to start, it's having you join right now, it's just going slow, so as soon as you're in, I will let you know, but if you want to start,
all right.
I can put up a copy on the screen myself.
We've all got slides from you, so.
All right. This thing connecting is in the middle of my screen. So if you don't care, I don't care, but I'll get rid of the,
Here, I can put it up on the screen.
Ben can try to put it up.
oh, here I am.
Oh, you're in?
Oh, you're
Yes,
in,
I am.
all right. Fiscal year 2025, caseload budget drivers.
Alright, let me.
Oh, we lost it.
I'm gonna let, Matt share it, so you can click through. Alright, you should be all good.
I have no idea what you're doing. All right, we're back again.
All right, so you see me? Yes, good for everybody. All right, I'm Matt Valerio, I'm the Defender General for Vermont. This is the 6th time I've done this, so I should have it down by this point. Maybe 7th, given that I did it with administration before the session, although it's been refined to some degree. The opening slide basically is sort of summary of what we're doing. We have a number of things that are driving our budget. I'm going to briefly go through some caseload and backlog analysis so you have an understanding of that side of it, and what the clearance rate is and the impact on that. I'll also show you what the governor's recommended budget does to what our current situation is, and then really the crux of what drives everything in the DG's office. There's one person in the room, well, 2 people, Bob Palin, he probably has heard this before, but one senator left in the room from when I started this job in the Defender General's office. I've been through 29 years of being in the red. And the first year I took over, I restructured the system, and I had 10 months basically to try to overcome a $700,000 budget shortfall on a $6.7 million budget at the time. But the DG's office had a structural problem that I addressed, and by the end of that fiscal year, we had an $83,000 surplus. And that structure going forward has been the thing that's kept the DG's budget within budget for 23 consecutive budgets without budget adjustment, because we know what we need to make it work, and then I never have to come back. It's very simple. Give me what I need, I don't have a problem. All right, so 22, 23, what did we see? We saw we saw double-digit increases in all the major areas of criminal law. over 13% increase in felony cases, over 10% increase in misdemeanors, and probation violations were up over 15%, right? You might want to,
Where do you
you
get,
might want to wait.
Okay.
Just, the second slide's a little, but you can probably see it on whatever's been printed out for you. Shows what it looks like, statewide, because not every county was impacted the same way. At the bottom, you'll see those numbers that I just showed you, felonies, misdemeanors, and, others are the probation violations. Of note, Bennington County saw a massive increase, Chittenden County saw a massive increase, Lamoille County, Orleans, and Rutland. Some counties saw decreases, and part of that was, honestly, charging decisions by the state's attorneys in those particular counties. So you get a sense of where maybe your particular county is or the like. This is an overall look through January of what the backlog looked like. And if you go back to March of last year, and there was a backlog overall in the state of almost 19,000 cases, 18,700. This, by the way, is not my data, this is the court's data. And then you saw a huge decrease, and I don't know why, between March and April. What you then saw, however, and if you look at this on my next slide, is in May, June, July, you saw it creep up again to the mid-15s. And then if you hit, when you hit August, September, by September, we're basically almost back to where we were in March, again with a drop, but we've sort of settled in this area of the mid-15 to 16,000 range for the backlog. We haven't been making significant progress. If you look at it on a line graph, because some people sort of like that, this is what it looks like. But really what you can do is draw a line pretty much flat across it. What we've seen in aggregate is about a 4% decline in the backlog through the end of the year. That hasn't changed significantly since then. And part of it is because the added cases are coming in. Again, this is just another way of sort of looking at that. Now, this, again, will show you the backlog in the various counties so that if you have an interest in what's going on here.
Before you go, can we go back to the clearance rate trends?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we do know is that clearance rates affect criminal activity, right?
Particularly with regard to violations of conditions of release.
Right. Data suggests that the number one deterrence is getting caught. The number two deterrence is being held accountable in some form. I don't mean you have to go to jail, but I mean you're held accountable. So what we know from the figures I just read from the Justice Center, 18% unsolved major crimes in Vermont. It's an increase. And now we have a clearance rate. Could I argue that clearance rate also contributes to violations of conditions of release violations?
Yeah, absolutely. And it tends to particularly be, honestly, with more minor misdemeanants who have trouble controlling impulses. So people who have mental illness or substance abuse issues that aren't on the high end of the spectrum, but will rack up 25 charges over a period of months or years while they're sitting on conditions of release.
If for the Judiciary Committee, knowing what we know about best practices and so forth, this should be a highlight. I wonder if you could make separate copies of the clearance rate trends.
These have been, by the way,
The one that's up there right now. Yeah, as we discussed more of the.
These have been these are in House Appropriations, House, Senate Appropriations, House Judiciary, all of these slides, they're out there.
No, I know, but this is important.
But for your
when I start
purposes,
to
I know
deal
that
with,
You know, it's not the, honestly, it's like not the increase in, you see some of these bills and you're gonna see some bills that come over. And I'm sorry that I haven't been able
I'm sorry.
to be here on some of the substantive policy stuff. We basically had the entirety of my executive administrative staff just below me has left within the last year. It's not because they hated me after 23 years, or that might be part of it. But they've all been they're over 30 years. Laura has been with us for 50 years. And it's time to retire. They're 35, 40-year employees. And so everybody I have is 10 months or less under me, and I've got to attend to that. And I couldn't do but talk about some of the policy stuff. But what I'm trying to get at, it's not going to be like increasing penalties for retail theft or making it easier to prove retail theft that's going to get at your issues. It's going to be dealing with the pendency of a lot of misdemeanors and felonies, but a lot of misdemeanors keep coming back and back and back. And so they're not held on bail because they're misdemeanors, and they're not, they can't be held without. So you end up with people out there having a problem. And so the instant reaction is to say, let's figure out a way to lock them up. When really what we should be doing is getting them through the system to the help either that they need, or if they are sentenced in one form or another. So clearance rates are important, because, this whole thing leads to kind of the big finale when we get there, of what I think needs to be done. Senator Bowles.
Yeah, so I now have two questions, and they weren't specifically about my county. One is back on the sort of increased rates of felony charges, and I'm wondering if your office keeps any data as to whether or not that is a change in charging practices or an actual change in what's happening.
I think in certain things, my opinion is that in certain areas, it is a change in charging practices. And I will say particularly the murder stats are very misleading. There are a lot of charges that we get for attempted murder and accessory and conspiracy and aiding that in the past would have been charges for aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, or other charges that don't have the label murder. And before I had this job, I tried and litigated murder cases. I did a lot of them, relative to, Vermont. You only have a lot in Vermont. But I had our office go back and check 5 years of stats on attempted murders and how many people were convicted of attempted murder. The number was 0. Nobody was convicted in the last 5 years of attempted murder. And in the old days, they would charge those as aggravated assaults. You would resolve those cases, they would become witnesses in the actual murder case. And merely, I'm not saying that this is good activity, okay? Firing a gun at somebody was not an attempted murder. That would be an aggravated assault or a reckless endangerment. If you hit them, then you can say, yeah, well, then it's an attempted murder if in fact that was, you have to look at all your facts and circumstances. Now, when you get those cases, they're being charged with the highest possible charges as opposed to the charges that you can prove. I understand that some prosecutors have the idea that this gives them leverage to resolve cases and so on and so forth. The bottom line is they end up in the same place they always ended up. And we devote a lot of serious felony unit resources to defend those cases. And I'll tell you honestly, I don't think that the state's attorneys enjoy the fact that basically the best and the brightest defense lawyers in the state, once they ratchet it up to the level of a murder case, now you've got the very best with a lower caseload of people litigating those murder cases, as opposed to if it was an aggravated assault, they would probably stay in the kind of normal contract system in the normal state's attorney's office, public defender's office. And you don't have these guys and women who are very highly skilled, just hammering them in serious felony unit cases. But as you ask me, is there a change in charging? I think there is. There are also differences in state's attorneys and how they charge violation of conditions of release. There are some, there are things that you might have to do weekly or daily. Check in at the police station, make sure you haven't left the area, whatever it might be. Some counties, if a person doesn't show up and they are on arrest status, when they get arrested, will charge a violation of conditions of release for failing to show up. Others will charge a separate charge for every day that they don't show up, and they might have 50 violations of conditions of release. And that's something too that is historically has been the case.
But that's understandable. I see that Trump's interest rates on his bond go up every day. The thing is, it changes with the state's attorney. I mean, Vince Aluzzi used to take one guy, he'd be gone for 3 months, and he charged 90 counts of violation of conditions of release, and in Chittenden County, you'd get one. Bennington was at one time renowned for that sort of thing too. Other counties were somewhere in the middle, and others did little with it. Senator, I want to get on, make sure he gets through his presentation, but go ahead.
Yeah, so in the instances where you're seeing a case that is charged with a higher crime that ultimately ends in the same place, it has always ended up, are you seeing an increased budgetary expenditure on those types of cases? Does that cost more?
Murder cases that go to serious felony units cost us more, yes.
Okay. And then my last question is just on your charts. I noticed they start on 3/1/2023. Do we have 3/1/2024 data?
No.
Okay.
Because we're not even done with 3 yet. So it takes them usually a couple of months to scrub it.
Right. I wasn't sure how long that data took to process.
Usually it's in the 30 to 60 days.
Okay. Statewide criminal backlog.
Right. Clearance rates. So our backlog we've made some progress. It's a little bit more than, we're resolving a little bit more, but I actually did some math on this, and I testified to this fact before, that if we try to get rid of the backlog at this rate, it's like paying off your credit card, making the minimum payment. We'll be doing it for 39 years. So it's going to take a really long time at this rate unless something changes. Less cases are coming in.
You have these broken down by misdemeanor felony? Backlog, I mean, is there anywhere I can get that?
Maybe the courts have it.
Could you ask the court for that, Ben, please?
That's this that I have for 2-1. These are the gross numbers.
Misdemeanor, the backlog.
Right,
broken
that's
down
this.
by misdemeanor versus felony. But you've got latest criminal
That's this slide. I don't have it in the chart, but as of 2-1, it's breaking down by county. Cases that are under guidelines, over guidelines.
Yeah.
And the like.
Could you make, Ben, it's right here actually, what I was looking for.
And like I said, we don't have February yet.
Right, then that's fine. Well, it tells me where we're backlogged and
this is also what it doesn't have misdemeanor felony,
right,
but it has these various areas broken down.
my understanding, if I could, just so I understand, misdemeanors are not high priority.
Right.
So
people who are incarcerated have
so
first
people,
priority.
Who are on misdemeanor charges could be out for 3 years and before their case comes up.
There are a lot of those.
And many of them probably have done fine and not gotten in any trouble.
Correct.
Many of them have had numerous violations. It seems like if we, and the Attorney General's office suggested a misdemeanor docket, special docket. Not necessarily, I don't know if that's a good idea.
It's a bad idea.
Okay?
Very few, we have some number of misdemeanors that are standalone, but many of them are attached to felonies. You can't separate, and when you resolve cases, you try to resolve them globally. Our system's not designed to do creating separate dockets like that. You know, it's one thing maybe to have a DUI docket or something like that, where that's all somebody's doing. I don't think that the economies of scale would assist in reducing the backlog by doing that. There's just so much that is intermixed, misdemeanors and felonies. In any event, this is so you can take a look at what your county is doing in various areas. So anybody who's under 100% is going backwards relative to the backlog. If you're over 100%, you are making some progress. Of note, Wyndham, and believe it or not, Orleans, Franklin, Caledonia, Bennington, those are actually kind of bigger volume counties when it comes to caseload. Chittenden obviously has the most, but Chittenden has made progress on the criminal docket, but if you go over to the juvenile docket, it's falling way behind because its clearance rate's only 24%. And Caledonia, you can see the numbers for yourself. I kind of highlighted by hand, well, it's not sort of by hand, electronically by hand, what the ones where we're falling behind. So even in the counties where we're doing well or better on the criminal side, we tend to not be doing particularly well on the juvenile side, which is a whole other problem. So this is the impact of the governor's recommended budget, and I know it's a little bit small. I had to try to fit it in here on one sheet. The part of what I had talked about is what I talked about earlier, which is basically our fiscal responsibility over a really long period of time, and that we haven't had a budget with budget adjustment in, it's actually 22 years, 23 budgets. The problem here is that this does not provide level service. All right. We have, in effect, caseload relief contracts to prevent cases going ad hoc or cases languishing. We have assigned counsel contracts and serious felony units that are funded at a certain level, which is $150,000 per LEC. Per LEC meaning per lawyer equivalent caseload. Shortest way of saying that is what the average added caseload that a public defender working full-time should be able to handle in a year. All right, and I can break down those numbers if you want to, but that's what an LEC is. The budget doesn't account for what we're seeing in other personal services. Other personal services are litigation support services. They are investigative costs. They are mental health evaluations. Anybody you would need an expert cost to support the litigation that you're dealing with. Those services have skyrocketed since 2020. And I'm talking about ridiculous, my opinion, ridiculous increases, more than 100%. So a psychologist or a psychiatrist who was charging $175 or $150 an hour to assist in a case, do an evaluation, testify in court. They're now charging anywhere from $300 to $600 an hour. You know, there's a unique thing going on with the folks who are doing the tele-evaluations for the Department of Mental Health. I think John Campbell may have talked to you about this, but they have whatever their contract is to do the work for mental health. But then when one side or the other wants to call them as a witness in court, they're charging $600 an hour to do that work. Now, that's not a great thing in and of itself, but you know, if you got to go out of state, you might have to pay out of state rates. The problem is that the few people who we have locally who are doing the work, they know that. So now they're charging $600 an hour. And it is, and so there are some varying differences, but I'm actually thinking already and preparing for like next year's budget on how to demonstrate this. And I can show that these numbers pre-2020 were, and they've just gone like this, like right through the roof.
So expert witnesses.
Everything. You know, there were things that I did during the pandemic, and sometimes I think I'm too direct when it comes to budget stuff. During the pandemic, I didn't need we didn't need travel expenses. We didn't need mileage, right? We weren't sending people to Mississippi to see the inmates during the pandemic. We didn't have lawyers traveling to do trials during the pandemic. So I said, we don't need that money. So you take the money out. We couldn't do in-person training during the pandemic. So take that money out. We don't need it because we can't do in-person training. Well, those things have all come back. But the money never came back. It didn't come back last year, and the governor's recommend doesn't include it this year. The other thing that has happened is we've had the market for lawyers and lawyers' pay has gone way up. And we are not competing we aren't competing to hire Vermont Law School graduates. You know, 85% of them don't even apply to become lawyers in Vermont. And of the 15% that do, their pass rate is something under 50%. So we're arguing over 7 or 8 lawyers out of VLS every year when they graduate 100 or so. And then they may or may not stay even if they're licensed. So our pool to hire people is regional now. It's not, you know, when I first was DG, they had 250 people in a class at VLS. They're now in the 120 to 150 range, and they're graduating 100 or so. And so we have to go out and we're trying to get people from Boston law schools and New York and Connecticut and that sort of thing. And, you know, in the staff system, we have a starting salary of $63,000. I have a niece who happened to graduate from Vermont high school, good student, went to Holy Cross, undergraduate, good student, you know, not the first in her class, but a good student, top 10%, went to Catholic University School of Law, good law school, not the best, not the worst, graduated again, you know, top 20% or whatever of her law school class, comes back looking for jobs, ends up getting a job with a medium-sized firm in Massachusetts. Her starting salary was $200,000, right? And she got a $40,000 bonus for staying 6 months. And then at the end of the year, got a bonus for if she made her hours, and they paid her 10 grand to move. So her first year, she's putting almost $300,000 in her pocket, and I'm paying 63 grand. All right, that's a medium. That wasn't Pale and Door. That wasn't a law firm with 15,000 lawyers and, you know, offices in Paris. That's a medium-sized law firm in Massachusetts with somebody who graduated from a Vermont school who you think maybe want to come back here. No chance, because they can't pay off their loans. So we end up in a situation where we can't pay entry level. We've got I'm paying 75,000 for people who stepped. And by the way, she hadn't practiced one day of law coming out of law school. to get that money.
Well, that's more than the governor makes, by the way.
Yeah,
Not much.
it's twice more than twice what I make. So in any event, the point is not necessarily her, because I know there
Yeah, I
are people who are lower. But the budget is not reflecting the marketplace. It's not reflecting it in OPS, it's not
We've
reflecting.
got
it in
about
return.
10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Send her a sheet.
And I've got this,
I can look it up later.
let me just tell you, the challenges, these things that are listed as challenges are things that I asked for to stay at level service. Level service, not adding one thing, just to keep things the way they are now. Now, let me show you, this, all right? This is the whole key to making sure the DG's budget works. Remember ad hoc cases? You probably don't very much, because
Actually, I do.
in the old days, ad hoc was basically the way we provided conflict services. When I took over, there were about 25 conflict contracts, and almost everything else was ad hoc. So that's 2002 fiscal year. During that time, the restructuring caused the massive dip that you saw that went from 2002 and went right down to 2006. It floats around in there, and you say juvenile cases, criminal cases, whatever, and I adjust the number of contracts and where they are based on where I see ad hoc come up. But we beat ad hoc down to a really small number, and that's really good fiscal decision making. I'll show you why. These are the 4 ways that we provide public defense services. The cost, remember I was talking to you about LECs, right? This is the combined cost for per case, or per lawyer equivalent caseload. Public defense staff offices with steps and salaries and benefits and all of that, you would expect to be higher than some others, but it's $302,000 per LEC. Public defender contracts, which are the primary public defense contracts like what you have in Washington County here, or in Windsor County, and in the Northeast Kingdom, are $225,000 per LEC, and assigned counsel conflict contracts, right? So these are your serious felony units, your caseload relief contracts, your local assigned counsel conflict contracts. Those are $183,000 per LEC. Ad hoc counsel, and this is before the increase from $50 to $100 an hour, which happened July of 23. It costs $671,000 per LEC for ad hoc counsel. All right, this is pre-$100. This is when it was $50 an hour. All right. Post $100 an hour, assuming the same caseload, that number goes to 1.3 million per LEC. All right, that's going forward. Right now, we're working ad hoc cases through the system that we're being charged at $50 an hour. We have right now 10 caseload relief contracts that are in place. As of 2/8, they were handling approximately 1,500 cases. And they cost the state $1.283 million. All right? If the governor's recommend goes through as it is, all 10 of those, it's actually 12 people doing 10 LECs worth of work, but they all go away. Those cases don't go away, but those contracts go away. So what happens? The cases aren't. You end up, those cases are forced now into the ad hoc system, which is the only way that they're going to be covered because there aren't contracts there to do them. And at $100 an hour, what used to cost $1.28 million is going to cost over $13 million
So
to handle the same caseload.
you don't get the 1283,400 in the FY 25 budget. It's gonna cost you 13 million to deal with.
In ad hoc expenditures, not all at once,
No,
but
I know,
over a period, as those
of
cases
time.
come in over a period of years.
So,
Let me just show you this. Here's the next one.
yeah, that's true.
This is the summary sheet, all right? That 1.283 million, that is for the caseload relief contracts. We have negotiated deals that, you know how I do this at Senator Sears, you know, because we've had our budget for the whole time I've been here.
15 years.
Yeah, or maybe longer. When I start a term as Defender General with my primary public defense contractors, I negotiate a 4-year deal so that during the course of my term, I know exactly what those primary public defense contractors are gonna cost. It's all, you know, goes through Secretary of Administration, it gets signed off on. And this year, these last 4 years, I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I'm telling you the facts. We're killing those people because their increase is like 2%, 1%. You know, over, you know, it's a 5% increase over 4 years. Meanwhile, we hit, you know, massive inflation and all these things, but I have a contract, they have a contract. $93,000 is due to the Northeast Kingdom, law in Orleans, based on those contracts. I asked for the $50,000 so I can do in-person training again. Remember I told you during COVID, I gave it up, I never got it back. Well, I'm asking again. You may know that the DG's office has recently implemented, as of July 1st of 23, our newest case management system. I don't ask for money during fiscal years that I don't need, right? So if I have a case management system where the total cost is going to be 1.2 million, I'm not asking for 1.2 million in year one. I'm asking for what I need in year one, what I need in year two as we're implementing, and what I need in year three or whatever going forward. So I didn't ask for the $117,000 for this AdvoLogix case management system, ongoing support and maintenance costs, which we knew was coming last year or the year before. I asked in the year I need it. That wasn't in there. The current assigned counsel contract obligations, this is what it costs to run the conflict contract system as it is. And keep this in mind. First year in my entire tenure, there were 3 major conflict contracts that I was not able to fill. One in Chittenden County, one in Washington County, one in Windham County, because the lawyers didn't exist to do the work. First time. I've been warning of this for a number of years.
You have.
And then finally, the serious felony units were actually getting paid less per LEC than the regular conflict contractors. And I raised them so they were getting 150 per LEC as well. They actually should be higher. Bottom line is I have those filled. And there's been approved as part of our case management system, there has been, there was some number of years ago approved a data manager position that we need to overall manage the case management system, which we didn't need until the system actually went online as of this fiscal year. And you remember Mary Diet, who worked for us for 33 years or whatever it is. Well, remember I talked about people who retired? Well, she retired. She was doing the equivalent of like 2.5 jobs. She's retired, but I don't have the money to replace her. That's the 138,000. So to do exactly what we're doing now and nothing else, we need the $2 million to change nothing. All right. I have been asking for a number of years for a couple of things. And so I asked, and this is new stuff.
Yeah.
All right. I've been asking for 5 years for a Bennington juvenile attorney.
Yes, you have.
I need a Bennington juvenile attorney. And then there's this thing, this fiction that goes on in budgeting involving special funds. We have a public defender special fund that is funded by co-pays on cases, right? And we get spending authority of $589,000. But we never collect $589,000, even though that's counted toward our budget. So every year we start with like a $300,000 deficit in the budget before we ever do anything. I just want to get real at some point and say, look, the special fund hasn't been performing at that rate for a decade. Could we make it like so that at least people understand that we either have to cut things or hold positions open longer, that kind of
Now,
thing.
who makes the decision whether somebody deserves public defender? The judge, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in statute if you're.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's not you, it's the judge.
No, we get whatever they.
So you get whatever the judge decides you can get.
Right,
So it's
we
not
don't-
like you have control over
No,
the decision.
Can't turn anybody away. And then there's the one thing that it's in there, and I've talked to, this is a Mary Hooper deal. And God bless Mary Hooper, but we have this money for this program that's actually won awards, this family support program that I built out of nothing about a decade ago, that assists people who are in family court, and particularly in Chin's care and neglect cases, accessing services, getting through the system so that they can help get their kids back. And it's been very, very successful. But there have been times over the years where we've had rescissions. And if I have to cut something, I would always say, look, I got to cut the family support program, worker support program, because it's not lawyers. Like, it's really social worky. But she didn't like it when I said that. So she took the money and she stuck it in DCF's budget and said, but it's only for the benefit of the Defender General's office, family support worker. So every year we've got to go and get an MOU and an interdepartmental transfer, and it's all this administrative work, because some number of years ago, just put it back in our budget. I'm not going to cut the family support worker program unless it is, the most dire of needs. But there are literally people now over there, because they have a churning of their staff, they have no idea what the hell it is. And I've now been through 3 financial directors in the last couple of years. And, I try to explain to them, there is this one little weird thing, you have $150,000 over in DCF's budget. And let's just, it's budget neutral, it doesn't cost anybody anything more, just put it back in our budget. So doing that, keep us level service, we're $2 million short, and those couple of things. Now, none of that gets at the backlog, any more than what we're doing right now, but we aren't
Keep
going
you at
backwards.
the current level of service.
Correct.
Final questions? Matt, thank you very much for the presentation. I sure appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out how many years you've been Defender General?
I'm in my 24th year now.
So I think I've been doing the criminal justice budget for that long, I guess. Because the only time I was not on appropriations was 2 years when I was over to finance. And then in my first 4 years, first 2 years, I was not on appropriation. My first term, I was on institutions, and during Act 60, for some reason, I was on finance for 2 years, and I scrambled right back to approach.
At the time, I had no idea I was going to be Defender General, but I actually had come in, I believe it was one of your early years as the chair of this committee, and I had been brought in, I think Bob Paley brought me in for some reason to comment on some bill. And that was I don't remember exactly what the bill was like, but I remember what I said, and you laughed at me, which was, I said, well, you do what you want, because defense lawyers will figure out a way around it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah. And you're like laughing because you're like, you damn lawyers.
Yeah.
And I never knew I'd be here at that point, but
I do remember
It had something to do with like DLS or something, I don't remember, but it was just,
Yeah.
it's been a long time, that's all.
It has. You know, it's funny,